Hey y'all, welcome to the new year, 2010. Who would have thought we'd have made it this long? Regardless, this is my review of Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 for the PlayStation 3. Exclusively for the PlayStation 3, actually, though, if you've played Ninja Gaiden 2 for the Xbox 360, I imagine you have got largely the same game. But there are a few key differences, and regardless, I want to review this game in case anyone was somewhat hesitant to get into this franchise as I was. Now, first off, if you remember my review of the previous game, which I do have on my channel, or if not, I'll summarize for you here, I did say that I thought the game was fun, and it was rewarding, but it was far too challenging to be worth the while, in my opinion. I mean, there's one thing of being tough, and just being masochistic on other levels. Or sadistic on other levels, I guess. And, you'd really have to be masochistic to play that game. On the other hand, Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 has made quite a few steps towards the so-called quote-unquote casual gamer, which, though I am not, I do appreciate because by steps, I mean it is now playable. That's not to say I didn't beat the first one, by the way, so naysayers, shut the hell up. Anyway, Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 is a lot more fun for a lot of reasons, but I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. First off, I'll start with the story. I'm not really going to bother to say much here. Basically, Dragon Sword is stolen, Spider Ninja Clan is back, Fiends are back, you gotta go kill them all, there's a bunch of random incidental characters, and overall, it's really just a pointless action plot. But at the same time, I gotta say, this plot was a lot better than the first game. I realize we really shouldn't judge games by their plot, for the most part, but this one, it was at least coherent nonsense, whereas the first one was just plain nonsense. Now, for the graphics and sound, this game, being originally made for the 360, looks much better than the original Ninja Gaiden Sigma, which is simply an upscaled version of the Xbox game, Ninja Gaiden, or Ninja Gaiden Black, actually. So, there is a lot better effects. There is some slowdown here and there, and a little bit of screen tearing, but nothing you will really mind. This is a beautiful looking game. Some things are a little shiny, as you kind of saw at the beginning of this generation, but it doesn't really detract from the experience too much, considering most of the things that are shiny are demons, so give or take, you know? It's not something realistic, so it didn't bother me as much. It might bother other people. It's worth mentioning, I guess. As for the sound, it's thunderous, it's loud, basically what you want. The music's a little more varied than the first one. It's hard to remember, honestly, because music for this game is, this series, I guess, is rather forgettable for the most part. So, pleasing package? How's the gameplay? Well, this is a largely single-player experience, and so as such, I'll start in that. The single player is about 10 to 12 hours long. It's not very long, but it is satisfying enough. It has been largely improved by the fact that there are now lower difficulties that don't actively insult you, as the first game did. And as well, they've inserted a rebounding health bar into this game, which really, really helps the difficulty a lot, where you narrowly survive a fight. You can now narrowly survive a fight and feel like you can actually live to fight another one. It really helps move things along, really helps improve the pace. There are much quicker checkpoints than there were in the first Ninja Gaiden Sigma. And generally, it's just a lot more pleasing with a lot less cheap enemies. There's still some, but not as much. And a lot fewer platforming moments, because it's not as precise as I guess they've realized it's not as precise as it needs to be for that kind of thing. Most of it, though, is quite pleasing. The platforming I actually did find a lot better this time around, even when they did pop up, though there was less of it, like I said. But the gameplay is just an action-adventure game in the vein of Devil May Cry, God of War, blah blah blah, so many others. And the difference with this one is, as with the first Ninja Gaiden, it really helps, and it's really rewarding. And that once you get to know the weapons, and once you get to learn the combos, you feel much more powerful, rather than just upgrading your weapons, which you do, but it makes more of a difference when you are learning it yourself. It's actually very surprising, and it's a very, very rewarding experience by the end of the game, knowing that you yourself have learned and built up with yourself with this game, and you have increased your game to match its difficulty. That said, they do have, like I said, they have given you an easier difficulty, and on top of that, they have made it so that you can do somewhat masher combos, which can help out in a pinch. But like I said, newbies will definitely appreciate. If you're afraid of Ninja Gaiden because of the difficulty, this is definitely the game to jump in. Don't worry about the story; it's completely bogus regardless. And generally, yeah, this game is just a lot of fun. The single-player experience, it's quite varied actually environmentally, and there's some good ranged puzzles. I use puzzles lightly. It's more just killing enemies in a different way. And there's a lot of bosses this time around, definitely a lot of bosses, but because of the easier difficulty, you can gain money a little easier, get more health items, so you don't feel like you're killing yourself every level, even when there is multiple bosses in a row, which is usually something I hate, but this game handles it quite well, and I do not think many people will have a problem with this, if they are moderately proficient, which this game does demand, but like I said, does lax a little bit, and you don't have to be a masochist to try and get through it. So, unlike the first game, also have to note the environmental variations, where in the first game it was a lot of random corridors. You'd have, oh, I'm in Castle B, I'm in random industrial environment, blah. Well, basically this time you go to Venice, you go to the Underworld like you'd normally expect, you'd go to your ninja village like before, you go to New York City. It's a very interesting environment to see a ninja in, and it's a lot of fun to go through these areas, especially when you have kind of this giant scythe in Venice. That's pretty hilarious and awesome at the same time, which is largely what this game survives on. In all honesty, like I said with the story, it's slightly coherent, but the entire game revolves around just being quote-unquote awesome. You feel really powerful, you're having a lot of fun playing it, that's the main goal, and it succeeded, I think. The last thing I really need to note is that from Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, they have added, this is different between the original Ninja Gaiden 2, they've added a few boss fights which are quite cool, including a possessed Statue of Liberty, as well as 3 new playable characters. Returning from Sigma is Rachel, as well as Momiji and Ayane. Well, basically, I think they're good additions. I thought they could have been fleshed out a little more, but seeing as they only take place, they have one level in the single player, I think they break up the action quite nicely. And moreover, I think they are meant to be introductions to the team missions, which is actually an online cooperative mission mode, which was from the first game, but like I said, is now multiplayer. And there's unlockable costumes in it. The thing it reminds me of most, I suppose, is probably Mercenaries mode in Resident Evil 5. Basically, it's just a co-op Ninja Gaiden. You're stuck in one single area. Bunch of enemies keep respawning, different areas, different foes, and you gotta take them out, complete enough of them, you get more costumes. You have all the characters unlocked by the end of the game. You unlock them as you go through it, and you have to select a specific weapon, magic power, and whatnot to get through that area. There is some strategy involved, and I really appreciated it. It's not a huge element, I must admit. It's not very sprawling, and it's a little hard to connect to friends, but at the same time, it's really fun, and should definitely not be overlooked. Once you beat the game, it does add, I would say, 5 or 6 hours of game time, if you're not going to go through the main game again. So it is definitely a worthy addition. Overall, Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 is a fantastic action game that I definitely suggest you check out. It's a lot easier, a lot more fun, a lot better looking, and is actually worth the money, which, I don't know where everyone else is living, but I live in Canada, has been bumped up to $80 flat. Regardless, pick it up. It's a good game.